I'm DeMark Jenkins. I'm an associate in corporate engagement for United Way of Central Indiana. And this is my story. I was born and raised in Gary, Indiana, just north here in Indianapolis, in a time when Gary is probably the most dangerous city in America. As one can imagine, it was very difficult for a young man, especially an African-American man, to grow up in such an atmosphere. Gangs, drugs, violence, underfunded school systems, you name it. Treaded those waters day in and day out, 18 years from the time I was born until the time I left. Typical family. I grew up in a small 2-bedroom duplex in the Glen Park section of Gary. Had both my mom, my dad, my 2 younger sisters, and we were your average American family. Mom and dad worked hard, made sure we had everything we wanted and needed. I like to joke and say I always had the newest pair of Jordans and a fresh haircut every week. We didn't want for many things. Christmas was good, holidays were good. My parents loved one another and showed us what it was like to build something. My father was a real blue-collar guy, worked in the U.S. steel mills, served in the U.S. military in the Army for 20 years each. My mom worked for the state of Indiana, both as a mail carrier in earlier years and then for the Department of Child and Protective Services. And one day, it all just shifted. April 28th, 1998, my life would change and shift and became something that I was so unfamiliar with. My father passed away of a massive heart attack on his crane. My mother was left to raise us by herself. Not much of a security blanket. And I guess most people in this situation would feel secure and know that things were going to be turning out for the best, but I wasn't always so sure of that. And my mom, a very strong woman, very prideful and a very self-willed woman, she struggled as well, whether it was with her own demons and addictions or just living with the fact that her best friend and confidant and child's father was no longer here. She did everything in her power to make sure that we were okay, but sometimes life has a way of issuing you cards that you can't necessarily play. So I went from being a kid who had all the newest stuff and was, in a way, privileged, and didn't want for much, to a kid who had questions about everything and then no longer understood anything. And I don't know, things started to happen and I just didn't understand. So I remember times when we'd have to let the oven down to heat up the house, or about the 6th grade when I used to walk in the house and the lights would be off and we'd go for a little bit of time just with no lights. Or, you know, there were times when you questioned what the meal was and if it would even fill you up for the night. And I was a pretty athletic kid. I was a good student, but after my father passed, all that stuff started to take a turn. My mom did everything in her power to make sure that I myself, as a young black man in Gary, did not become a victim of the streets or the judicial system. She did everything she could to keep me out of the ground and out of the jail cells. So she signed me up for every sport possible. Played Pop Warner football, Little League baseball, bitty basketball, all of my childhood. But as you know, those things only last for certain seasons, practices and every day. One day we made a trip over to 5th Avenue Boys and Girls Club in Gary, Indiana, and my mother talked to the executive director for an extended period of time, and I just kind of roamed the halls, and it was so out of my element. It was so different than anything that I was used to. Now, we got in the car and I went home. I said, Mom, there's no way you're sending me to this Boys and Girls Club. The kids in there are way too rowdy. There's too much going on, and I don't want to do this. So to make a longer story short, I ended up being a club kid for about 2 or 3 years. That place today has shown me how United Way is an investment, but not for now and not for tomorrow, but for years later to come. Because as a 26-year-old man, I get to tell you that I'm a beneficiary of United Way and all that it can do, whether it's keeping the doors of agencies open or Boys and Girls Club. And every single day I get to get up and I get to go to work for those who have stories like mine or who have stories similar to mine or sometimes worse, that never get an opportunity to tell anyone thank you. They walk in and out of doors of our programs and services. They walk in and out of the doors of the agencies that we support, and they don't get to shake the hands of the individuals who invest in United Way. they don't get to tell them thank you. And for me to be able to get up every single day and go to work for those people is truly an honor and a blessing.